Hey, this is Andrew Brown. In this video, I want to take a look at AWS Global Accelerator, which allows you to accelerate traffic or availability and performance of your applications by creating a super fast route to the end user, to your application. You can almost think of it as like a reverse CDN, if you will. So for this one, I'm actually going to open up AWS examples. Normally, when I use AWS Global Accelerator, it's like a checkbox away for most services. So when you're setting up something, let's say an application load balancer, you can checkbox it on. But I think that it would be more interesting to set this up using CloudFormation, which I have yet to do, but I think that we'll learn a lot by doing it this way to understand all the components that go involved. And so I looked at the CloudFormation components, and it looks pretty straightforward. So I don't think we were going to have too hard of a time. So here in our AWS examples repo, I open this up in Gitpod. I'm going to make a new directory. I'm going to call this one Global Accelerator. And I'm going to cd into that directory. And what I'm going to do here is look for that folder. And I'm going to start with the base with something somewhere. So I'm just looking for something where I already use, here we go, where I use CloudFormation. So in EBS, I have one. So I'm going to copy those. And we're going to make our way over to Global Accelerator. I'm going to paste these in here. And we have our deploy script. So this one is going to be Global Accelerator. So that is sufficient. So let's say deploy Global Accelerator. And I'm going to go down to template here. And we have a lot of stuff here that we don't necessarily need. Yeah, I'm just thinking about this for a moment because this sets up an EC2 instance with an Apache server. But if we're going to utilize this, we're going to want to globally accelerate something to somewhere, right? So this is what we need to figure out is what can we accelerate to? It says a service that improves the availability and performance of your apps with local or global users. It provides static IP addresses of a fixed entry point or specific things. So if you go into here, you have two options, custom routing and standard. And so for standard, what we do is we make endpoint groups and endpoints. And I believe endpoints can be for network load balancers, application load balancers. But with specific EC2 instances, we'd have to create custom routing. And so we're not going to know that until we proceed through this. So I don't really want to use this to create it. I just want to find out what's at this step. So I'm going to just say my accelerator. Again, I'm not doing this for real. I'm just going through here to see what we have. We'll say port 80. We'll choose TCP here. I'm going to go next. And then I'm going to say US East 1. And then I'm going to go next. And then we have our examples here. So it says add endpoints. Now that you've added one or more endpoints, you can add endpoints to each other, such as ELBs, or create EC2 instances. And so I want to add EC2 instances. So that's what I want to do. So what I'm going to do, I ignore this. And since we already have a security group here, this is actually quite excellent. And I'm just going to go ahead and remove off the volumes as we don't need additional volumes here. And so this will provide us a basis of our compute. Now, this thing's already configured to work for CA Central 1. So if you're copying this, change out the VPC, change out the image ID, change out the subnet. You can get the image ID if you go to the EC2 console. I show this a lot in the EC2 section and other parts of the course, but when you want to know it, you just go here and you launch an instance, okay, and then you choose that ID, right? So, replace those and go to VPC and we'll be in good shape. This will launch up an Apache web server. And I believe that we could just deploy this as is, but I'm just going to proceed to create the other components here. So let's go over here and take a look. So we have the Global Accelerator, cross-account attachment, which we're not doing. Then we have endpoints and listeners. So we're probably going to need a listener, an endpoint, and an accelerator. So I'm going to go down to examples, and maybe they have more for us here. Not necessarily, but I'm going to go ahead and grab these two. These seem pretty good to me. And we'll go down below here, and we'll paste this in. And by the way, if you're worried about the cost of Global Accelerator, you can just watch me here in the video. I'm not worried about cost, and most things I do are not going to cost me much because I'm very good at shutting these things down right afterwards or checking and triple checking. But, just understand that there is a cost and it's something. And if you're worried about that cost, then, just watch, okay? Or investigate the cost thoroughly for yourself. I don't know if we have to specify the name. If we don't, I'd like to leave it out. So name is required. Okay, so you have to name it. And it can't have a hyphen. So I'm going to just say sample accelerator. I don't think hyphens are allowed. Must not begin with a hyphen. Okay. I'm going to put some numbers here. I don't know if it's a fully qualified domain, but if it is, it looks like it is because it says DNS name. So I'm going to put something that is going to be something that will be fully qualified and work. Okay. So that's going to create our accelerator. The next thing I need is a listener. So we'll go here down to examples and we'll choose our listener. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and paste this. And this is going to reference our accelerator. This should not be under outputs. In fact, outputs should be indented. Back one. And we'll paste this in above. And this one should be referencing that one. I'm not sure why this one's upset. Expected a string. Just because it's not using the syntax you normally would see. So we'll do that. That'll fix that issue. And port 80 seems fine to me. That's actually what I want to utilize. So that is good. Very straightforward so far. And then we'll go to our endpoint group. And we'll go down below here. And here we have an example of our endpoint group. And we'll paste this in. Okay, and so that looks fine. We need to reference our listener, which is great. I'm just going to go ahead and do this. We have our endpoint region, say Central 1. Because that's where the resources are going to be. Yep. So CA Central 1. Traffic dial percentage 100, endpoint configuration, endpoint ID. So that's going to be referenced to whatever the endpoint is. So I'm going to assume that we either have to define an endpoint or we have to put a reference to the EC2 instance. So I'm going to go up here and let's take a look at that endpoint ID. Endpoint configuration. Endpoint ID. An attachment ARN. So cross account, no, we're not doing that. An ID for the endpoint. The endpoint for the NLB is the ARN. If the endpoint is an Elastic IP, this is the Elastic IP address allocation ID. The Elastic IP address. So if that's the case, it sounds like we have to have, I mean, that makes sense. We should have a static IP address with this. So we're going to need another thing, which will be Elastic IP CFN, and we're going to have to grab one that way. So I'm going to go here, and I'll go down to examples, and we'll have to grab this as well. And I'm going to go above our EC2 instance here. I'm just going to say static IP. And then here we're going to reference our instance. We'll say my EC2 instance. And then the idea is that we want to reference this. And I'm going to go take a look at the return values here. At the same time, I want to go back and back again and back again. So it says here the Elastic IP address allocation ID. So we're going to have to use get ATT. We're in, where is it here? Our endpoint ID is, where's our endpoint? Endpoint. Here it is. Okay, so we know that we want to get this, and it's going to be get ATT, and then it'll be static IP, like that. That looks good. I'm going to double check, make sure I wrote that correctly. And that looks good. Okay, great. So now we have that set up, and I'm going to go ahead and deploy this. My console is messing up on me. I'm going to give this a refresh. And of course, I don't have to do chmod u plus x because I copied that script. If it's not executable for you, make sure you do a chmod x plus u plus x. We do that in many other videos. I can just show it to you here just in case some folks did not copy it the way I copied it. But you do the deploy here like that, okay. And so I'm gonna go ahead and deploy this, and hopefully this is going to work. It doesn't like something for the endpoint ID, so I'm gonna go back to that. So endpoint ID. I might have some junk hanging around on this. Yeah, I had the ref in there by accident, so I'll go ahead and do this, take that out. Great, I'm gonna hit up and deploy. And we have a lot of moving parts, so I almost wonder if we have to have depends on any of these resources, but hopefully it's going to work as expected. We're going to make our way over to CloudFormation. I'm deploying this in CA Central 1, so we're going to have to change regions. I'm going to assume that this is available everywhere. Hopefully it is. And here we are. So I'm going to go into the stack. I'm going to go over to change sets. I'm going to go ahead and execute this change set. And hopefully, but not always, I hope this is going to work the first time, okay? So we'll just hang tight here. All right, so that was very quick, and we had no issues when creating this EC2 instance. So what I want to do is go over here and take a look and see if my instance is running, and if that static IP address is attached, and can we access the website. So we'll go ahead and open this up. Okay, and this, remember, this is on port 80, so that definitely does work here. And the IP address here is 397.151. I'm sure it's using the static IP, but I just want to go take a look here. 397.151.230. So now the next thing I want to know is Global Accelerator. Does it show up here in the instance? I don't think it does. It might. But even if it doesn't, we'll go take a look at the Global Accelerator console. So we'll go here and type in Global Accelerator. And here we have our Global Accelerator. We are using standard. It's apparently not using dual stack, which is totally fine. We'll click into this here, and we can see some information. So the question is, does it work? And the way we're going to find that out is by utilizing its DNS name. And so I was thinking that maybe that name that we named it was going to be incorporated in there, but apparently not, which is great because I hate it when you have to name stuff and figure it out. But we'll go ahead and try this out. And I want this on port 80. So I'll just say HTTP. Oh, it worked. It worked anyway. So there you go. Was it faster? I don't know. Let's try that again. Sure. Okay. There is a website that we can utilize to do a test speed. So I'm going to go look that up here. So test speed, Global Accelerator, AWS, comparison tool. Yeah, it's right there. I'll just click on this one here. So it says, AWS Global Accelerator is a service that improves availability and performance of your apps. This tool compares different locations. And so it's not like I can say mine in particular, but I can show more regions because I'm really curious about like CA Central, wherever that shows up, which apparently doesn't show up anywhere here. But we'll go ahead and just choose something like 1 megabyte and hit start. So files are downloaded over HTTPS to ALB in different regions, and then you get to see what happens. So direct over the internet, AWS Global Accelerator, 15% faster, and now it's running in all these different regions, and it's going to show us the difference. Why is this one slower? You're not selling me on this thing if it shows slower, but we'll just wait a moment here. Okay, and so I'll just pause here and let it go through all the regions, okay? All right, so yeah, I mean, we're getting stuff here. I'm not sure if it shows more if I go down here. And it's still running more, so it's going to take time. I really wanted to see CA Central here, which is over here, but it's far ways out here. But we get an idea that it is supposedly running faster. So yeah, hopefully that is good enough for you. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and tear this down. So we'll make our way over to CloudFormation. And I'll go ahead and delete the stack. And while we're waiting for that, I'm going to go ahead and save our template here. So this will be our Global Accelerator. And that had to be like the easiest lab I've ever done, where everything just worked the first time. And the thing is, I had yet to do Global Accelerator via CloudFormation, so I'm surprised that it was so darn easy. But it makes sense because it is just a checkbox when you're utilizing it in other services. But anyway, I'll be back here in just a moment when this is completely deleted. All right, so this is now teared down, and we are in good shape. I will see you in the next one, okay? Ciao.